In our last episode, the Empire dreamed once again of liberty and woke to the sound of gunfire at home and abroad. The parliament was restored, the constitution reborn, but as under Abdul Hamid, liberty was soon drenched in blood. The committee ruled through fear, and the Sultan prayed for peace as he saw the numbers of casualties in Ottoman Libya. The Balkans decided to answer his prayers with more death. This is road to destruction, the world wars. From the gilded halls of Dolmabahce, Mehmed V watched the storm gather. His empire was already losing a war with Italy, the Balkans seethed with revolt, and beyond them, Europe itself trembled. Every state armed, every alliance sharpened. It was as if the continent had forgotten peace, surrendering to an endless rhythm of conquest and reprisal, of revolutions devouring their children and empires devouring each other. And then, in the autumn of 1912, the Balkan states struck. Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, and Montenegro, old enemies, bound now by the opportunity they saw, formed the Balkan League and declared war on the Ottoman Empire. They claimed it was a crusade for liberation, but it was conquest in all but name. The first guns thundered along the Macedonian frontier. Within weeks, the empire's European army, poorly led, undermanned and starved of supplies, began to collapse. Even the German trained divisions, drilled and uniformed by Europe's finest officers, dissolved under fire. The world saw not modernization, but decay. The same Europe that had tutored the Ottomans in warfare now watched as its pupil bled. Refugees poured into Thrace, men, women and children fleeing burning towns, trudging east toward Istanbul. The railways clogged with the displaced. Entire villages vanished beneath the smoke. The empire's oldest provinces, the heartland of Ottoman Europe, were gone in months. Mehmed V watched their columns wind along the Bosphorus like funeral processions for the empire itself. The soldiers fought bravely, but they were ghosts of the once proud army Mehmed the Conqueror had led into Europe. In October, the fortress city of Adrianople, Edirne, once the empire's proud second capital, fell. The flag of the crescent was torn down. To Mehmed, it was like watching his ancestors buried alive. In the capital, chaos reigned. Ministers quarreled, officers fled, and the CUP turned on itself. Enver demanded counterattack. Talaat demanded order. Cemal demanded discipline. Mehmed said nothing. He could not command. He could only pray. His attendants found him in the palace mosque at dawn, whispering verses from the Quran, while the city trembled with rumors of defeat and the ominous scent of coup d'etat. As recriminations filled the capital, Grand Vizier Kamil Pasha, the cautious old statesman who had served sultans and reformers alike, sought to spare what remained of the empire through diplomacy. Secretly, he opened talks with the great powers, proposing peace terms that would surrender Edirne to Bulgaria in exchange for an armistice. To the Committee of Union and Progress, already fractured and humiliated, the news was intolerable. In the cafes of Galata and the barracks of the capital, whispers of treason spread like fire, and by January 1913, the embers had become flame. Enver Bey, young and burning with fury, led a band of armed officers through the gates of the Sublime Porte, rifles hidden beneath their coats. The halls that once echoed with imperial decrees now rang with gunfire. In the confusion, the Minister of War, Nazim Pasha, was struck by a stray bullet and fell dead upon the staircase, his blood pooling beneath the domes where empires had once been governed. The Grand Vizier was seized, forced to sign his resignation, and the fate of the empire changed with the scratch of his pen. By nightfall, the coup was complete. Crowds outside hailed Enver as the savior of the nation. But it was not salvation. It was transformation. The empire had replaced failure with fanaticism. The Treaty of London in May 1913 left the empire with only a sliver of Europe. a defensive line at Satalka, within sight of Istanbul's minarets. Albania was carved out as a new state, the Balkans were gone, and the Ottoman flag was lowered across nearly all of Europe. For the first time in 5 centuries, the empire of the sultans no longer reached the Danube. In Berlin, generals noted how quickly the Ottoman army had fallen, mistaking humiliation for weakness, a lesson that would echo 2 years later when they dragged the same broken army into a world war. But the Balkan triumph did not last. As soon as the spoils were divided, the victors turned on each other. Bulgaria, dissatisfied with its share, invaded its former allies. The Second Balkan War erupted, a smaller, bloodier echo of the first. From the north, Romania invaded, its armies marching almost to Sofia. And in that chaos, the Ottomans struck back. Enver, still young and reckless, led a desperate offensive to retake Edirne. For a brief and bitter moment, the empire fought on the same side as the very nations that had destroyed it, bound not by alliance, but by vengeance and opportunism. Against all odds, they succeeded. The city returned to Ottoman hands, and Istanbul erupted in celebration. But it was hollow joy. The empire's borders had shrunk to Thrace and Anatolia. Europe, the lands of the Sultan's birthright, was gone forever, and the great powers watched in silence. Russia, the self-proclaimed protector of the Slavs, let the slaughter unfold, eager to punish Bulgaria for its greed and for daring to act without permission. It was a warning dressed as indifference. In the Balkans, no one fought without the blessing of Europe. When the war ended in August 1913, Bulgaria was broken, its ambition crushed, and the Ottoman flag once again flew over Edirne. It was a victory without joy, a relic of empire reclaimed, but surrounded by enemies and ruins. Mehmed offered prayers of thanks, but in his heart he knew. This triumph changed nothing. The empire had not been reborn, only granted a final breath before the storm. He received the casualty lists with trembling hands, as if reading the names of his own children. The Balkan Wars were not only a defeat of armies, but of centuries, the final unraveling of the empire his ancestors had built, sword by sword, prayer by prayer. When the treaties were signed in 1913, the map of Europe had changed again. The Balkans were aflame with new nations, each claiming victory, each scarred by slaughter. And yet, across the continent, men cheered their armies, sang of glory, and dreamed of their own wars to come. The Balkans had merely gone first. The disease of nationalism was spreading, and soon all of Europe would catch the fever. In Istanbul, the committee grew darker. They blamed the defeat not on themselves, but on traitors, minorities, and the weakness of parliament. The anti-Christian sentiment deepened, fueled by the memory that it was Christian nations, Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, that had torn the empire apart. Inside the CUP, whispers spread that disloyal hearts had weakened the state from within. What began as suspicion would soon harden into ideology and eventually into vengeance. And Mehmed, the gentle poet, the caliph in name only, stood alone in his palace, surrounded by portraits of his ancestors. He saw in the Balkan Wars not only the end of Ottoman Europe, but the beginning of Europe's end. As he watched the continent continue to bleed and descend into madness, he wondered if perhaps it was Europe that was sick. In our next episode, The Storm After the Defeat, Coup and Retrenchment, we focus on the already mentioned raid on the Sublime Porte. The Young Turks will go full circle and seize power in a coup that ends even the illusion of liberty. From the ashes of defeat, new tyrants will rise and prepare the empire for its final act. This is Road to Destruction, the World Wars.